All right, here we are at Wellington's victory. What are we looking at? A little before 2 p.m. And what can we see? Well, the French attempted to do a flanking maneuver around the Hougoumont, either to undermine its position or to get around and hit the ridgeline there. And the Dutch here responded with a bigger flank. We've got some cav position in both cases. The French are kind of losing this battle over here. At the Hougoumont itself, it's something of a stalemate. Tons and tons of skirmishes, just duking it out. It's basically an attrition battle. Each time you roll, you have a chance, basically a 1 in 6 chance, I think, of hitting an enemy unit. You'll be dealing in this chart, but basically either soft cover or hard cover, depending, because we've gotten into the woods and everything with the French. However, here in the area directly to the French right of Hougoumont, we're making pretty good gains, and because the Allies came down off the hill, things don't look so good for them. They're going to have to try to do something, if I can remember, like bring some of those reserves up onto the crest in order to stop things from developing really in an ugly fashion. Likewise here at La Hassant, this is where the real danger lies. We've already gotten pushed out of it, and we'll probably be falling back to try to protect ourselves. That's not an easy thing to do, but to what extent we can withdraw any of the Allied units back onto the hill from here, we're going to try to do that. But the problem is, it could end up just collapsing and opening up a flank on these other units. And once you get flanks open, bad stuff starts happening. That's becoming pretty clear. Over here, the French have pushed forward towards the ridgeline. They've been repulsed a little bit, but they're making some gains over here. I've got some cav wandering around here not doing anything. The guard is not committed. I've got part of First Corps uncommitted. Otherwise, all my infantry is in play. I've got a lot of cav, but I haven't really seen a need for it. When we look at points, with La Hassant taken into account, we're looking at 210 for the Allies, 270 for the French, about equal number of units committed. So, are we able to break the Allied army by the time the Prussians come in? I think highly unlikely. I don't think the Hougoumont is going to fall. I don't think the rate of losses is high enough to break the Allied army. And without breaking the Allied army, the Prussians become a real problem. All right. I will see you on Sunday. It's Friday right now. Had a nice big buck run by my window a little earlier. Oddly enough, it's Saturday. A little before raid time, I figure I had enough time. I'm going to get the French command and rally in play. And then just, but it's oddly in the mood to do things. Got to try to remember, I know I'm supposed to activate some units here. Maybe more important, because I chose not to activate anything. I couldn't find anything I really wanted to throw into the fight. Is this right? I mean, I want to get these guys in, but I don't have anyone from Second Corps over there. And I will never remember because they're so far from everything that was ever Second Corps. There's some units on the Allied side that I have the same kind of feeling with, but at least Wellington can command them all, and probably no one else could anyway. But anyway, the more important thing was throwing this cav attack into play. And of course, I did my command phase, figured out what maybe I'd want to bring in. But it's a long time before I get around to actually moving any leaders and maybe noticing. I segment my thoughts too much, which is very helpful for solo play and in most games, because it's like you're not really aware of what your opponent's trying to do. Like, the point of view is just, switches. But it also switches in the context of what phase I'm in. So like if I do a command phase where I notice, oh, these guys are not in command, I'm expecting to be doing a movement phase sometime soon after. Anyway, we threw a cav charge zone out here. That's going to cause some disruption in the Dutch zone. I only used one of my 2 cav that's up at the front, and I have more, I think. This is a cav leader. He's got infantry under him. Yeah, the fact that you can use any leader to rally any troops means leaders are running off all over the place doing weird shit, and that they're not going to be near the troops that they really should be with. Now, in this case, this, I think, is not an actual, like, brigade leader. So he can't command anything anyway unless he's stacked on it, and he can command anything. So he's like, his designation means nothing, right? He can run around and be used anywhere for anything. And it's like, get rid of the fucking designations then. Nah, I mean, it's the only hint that I have that brings them into play. All right. Like a lot of or a couple of times recently, I'm noticing not only do I not have the time to go do the march phase or whatever, but also my hands are too shaky. I mean, they're not really, but it feels like I have a little bit too little dexterity a night after drinking to handle the tweezers and stuff properly. And just feel a little too clumsy to play these games right now. Some other games maybe. On Sunday, I'm not going to play. I found a counter, and I thought maybe it was the missing counter that I couldn't discover. Instead, it's a Prussian piece. I had a known issue where a bunch of pieces squirted out of my hand while I was clipping in my bedroom. And I thought I got them all, but who knows. Anyway, I found a bluish looking counter in my bed, and I thought, this could be somehow it got caught in my clothes or something. It is not the missing counter. I mean, it is a missing counter, but it is a Prussian one from that squirt. This is the second one I've found. I doubt that there are any more, but yeah. It's just a weird situation. Slick counters tend to squirt out of your hand more easily than others. I've got thoughts of going shopping. I don't know. It's awfully gray, and it should be prettier on a Tuesday. It's also wet, which has its own issues. I also saw a bunch of crows just flew by my, well, I saw something big and pale fly by my window. And then I went outside and a bunch of crows were up to something. I didn't know what they had, an owl or a hawk. Turns out it was an owl. I got to see it cross my yard being chased by him again. I decided not to intervene. I don't know. I like owls. I like crows. I feel bad for the owl, but it's like, yeah, but it should have to pay a price. The problem is I've had one of them, I had one cowering under my eaves at one point, but I had one hit my door, and then I had to save it. And that's not, you know, I don't really want to have, I definitely don't want a dead bird that size. You know, my ability to justify avoidance is just too good. Got some dice over here. That's to remind me during the Allied facing formation movement combination, I got to make a lot of morale checks because of the French cav draw charge. Because of that, we ended up with the infantry in the front and the cav more or less avoiding disorder markers. So it's pretty unlikely that this cav is going to be able to get anywhere. Can't charge over this. Well, we could. It'll disorder us. Unfortunately, we're going to be forced into a charge against squares, which is not cool. We were hoping to disorder at least one of them and thus get a nice hammer blow in. Instead, we're going to get fucked. And again, the mechanism works pretty well. Like, the way that the asymmetrical sequence and the charging and everything integrate, it works well. It's just, it may be better than any other game I've seen. It's just that it's painful, right? And I'm always hoping for systems that'll sort of cut the Gordian knot and come up with a non-painful solution that still shows the reality clearly, not some sort of design for effect type thing, but something that shows it clearly. And it may only be painful for me. I don't know. Anyway, I'll go over the rest of the units and see what I can get. So we end up throwing more troops up here, extending the line around the Huguenot. Broke down a big old 9-point light infantry. Throw more skirmishers in there. Just try to hold it at all costs. But that strategy, I think that's why I'm coming off the hill, whatever, right? Left a little gap here that I can't fill. I'm trying to spread out and fill the gaps. But again, the sequence of play has caused me, along maybe with other things, such as the difficulty of getting Wellington wherever I want him. It's gotten me into a position where I can't move my reinforcements up. I want to move these Brunswickers into place. I want to move this reserve division here up in, I don't know if it's a whole division. I think it's just a brigade. Actually, well, there's some artillery back there. I want to move these guys into place. I want to get forces up, to cover here, but I don't have the time to do so. I don't have the capability to withdraw from here. I needed to send a leader up. He's still not in place, right? It's just so painful. This guy, is he in charge of something? He's not even in charge of his own unit. I might actually be better off doing this. Okay. But does that fuck him up? Now this is like 3-1-1. I don't know. It's so fucking hard to keep everybody in command in this game. And then on top of that, you have these really, really painful... So, wheeling. Essentially not allowed if you're an extended line, right? It feels all wrong, So I have to form up into column because these units aren't good enough to form into triple rank where they'd still be fucked at 6 strength points. Yeah, these are 6 strength point units. They're not good enough. They start packed together in column. Well, presumably because if they were in line, they'd be an extended line and be interfering with all other and thus be disordered. So they're forming up into columns to try to cover some of the ground. This guy should have been activated already. He's not. Wellington could have commanded him, but I chose not to. I don't know why. I had turns to do so where Wellington was just sitting there. He just didn't see the danger. There was a lot of space, is what it comes down to. And now there's not, And then, I've got forces like this that could come in and reinforce up there on the hill there. Of course, Wellington's too close to the enemy to move quickly. So he's like moving, even though he's behind his own lines, he's moving at slow rate. I'll do a quick assessment, see if there's anywhere where I want to shock combat, but I highly doubt it. Shock combat's too dangerous in this game, but there might be a case to be made for it. I misunderstood what was going on, so I'm going to let the Brits cheat and reface this artillery piece here. This would be an optimal choice for shock combat. It's going to reface, but that means it takes infantry fire for doing so. And then I have to make a decision. Do I want to shock the artillery? And maybe, but, you know, taking the op fire for doing so is really painful. So you don't tend to get, unless the opponent fucks up completely, you don't tend to get an opportunity where you can shock an artillery piece and hit it from the flank or whatever. But you do get the opportunity to shoot their crew out when they try to reposition. And we managed to get a rare shock combat in. The firepower did not take the gun out. It only has a 1/3 chance of killing the crew there. And then the guns, well, they're going to get to fire anyway, so I might as well shock them. And I did so. I got lucky, although I took 2 hits. I ended up getting less than a 4, so I didn't rout, because I have no morale left after I take a hit like that, because the unit's morale just disappears in this game. And now I have a 200% ratio hitting, but hey, I'm at like -5. I get a DR from this, I rout. Damn, that's 2 more hits. Yep, shock combat, absolutely fucking worthless, because you're just destroyed by it. You really are. Every time you try to shock attack, your morale gets dropped to the point you probably get disordered. That means that you're going to be at that -4. You're just not going to go in, and you're going to break. There are things that feel cool about the fire shock combination here, but they don't actually quite work in practice. It's as if the systems in this, and I'm wondering, I don't feel like I had this much problem in Ney versus Wellington. I'm not sure why. I feel like I was able to do some successful shock combats in that. Likewise, the skirmishers didn't seem as important. The problem is I can't think of a singular reason for any of that. It may have been that there were slightly higher morale French units there. Like, that may be what needs to be tweaked, but that feels wrong, right? You don't want to value units. What I actually think should be the case is that, like, the impact of losses on morale are just too high on this. That's just what it feels like to me. Anyway, the gun successfully defends itself. It doesn't make a difference. It would have got a shot in anyway, but now it gets another shot. Of course, it's almost out of ammo. In terms of cannons, I found that they were incredibly effective in Ney versus Wellington as well. So that wasn't really the case. I'm just trying to think of why I was able to shock attack. There may have been more Allied units with lower morale or lower effectiveness in it, which makes the shock combat a lot easier. I may have been getting disordered results against them, which evens things up a little bit, so that, you know, your incoming fire is very unlikely if you can disorder the enemy before you shock them. Why does that not happen? I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I really don't know. I'm just not finding myself with opportunities to shock combat. I think the biggest thing is there just don't seem to be disordered units left in front of me after my fire round. It may be that I have so much concentrated fire and whatnot that the units are breaking differently or something, because I'm seeing these big gaps, but these aren't gaps that were created through shock combat. They were created through fire attrition. So, yeah. Weird. Like that artillery shot, I've gotten to the point where I'm tired of prefiguring things. I've played the game long enough, I should be able to make guesses. I know that you can't shock combat skirmishers, because skirmishers will just decimate you. Their morale is too high and it doesn't go down. But I've got an interesting one here, which is I've got a shock against this. I say I'm not going to prefigure, maybe I'm lying. I'm facing 7 strength points at a 2 morale. I've got 4 strength points. If I shock him, I'll disorder him automatically. There's no fire incoming to me. So what do we be looking at? What do we be looking at? Yeah, so I can make the decision immediately. So 4 to 7 is going to be, it sounds like 50% to me, right? What did I say he had? He has a 2 morale. I have a 2 morale, so no difference there. So we're on this column. I'd get the disorder for hitting him. That would put me here. Honestly, just doesn't look that good. But bad stuff could happen to me if I don't. All right, charge. I get a DR. This was already a disordered unit, so that's going to count as a rout, and it's going to fall away. And it also gets me out of it gets me away from some of the gunfire, which is kind of cool. How about that? We had a successful shock attack. Imagine. Of course, we had to hit the flank of an extended line. If it wasn't an extended line, it could have just rotated. Right? Sure, I could have shot at it then, but, you know, whatever. It was in a position where I would have wanted to just rotate. Could I have changed formation or something? Yeah, but then I would have taken more shot. Whatever. Whatever. And that's going to put us to the firing phase. Ziz. And yeah, I don't feel up to doing that right away. But all right, let's shoot some cannons. Allies got the initiative on this. Over here, I don't think there's a lot of conflict. In fact, I don't see any. So it kind of doesn't matter where I pick for the artillery fire. I put it over here and I realized, whoa, I forgot my cav. What the fuck? All right, I'm facing this way. I can't change facing without disordering myself. Let's see if I have any target. Yeah, I don't really want to bash into... I don't want to bash into either of these things. But I think I'm best off... No, can't hit this one. This is... I was going to say I'm best off hitting this smaller cav rather than the infantry. A 4-point infantry there. Jeez, I don't know, man. See, I'm going to be disordered no matter what. But I think I'm better off going after the infantry. So, we're not in a minimum range zone. We do take some fire from those squares, of course. What am I looking for here? I don't know. Yeah, I'll get back to the artillery fire in a moment. I've already dropped something, but we got charging cav going at, I think these are all 4s. See, this is where this system really starts to get kind of painful. And it's not at the level of like Summer Storm, but there's a lot of checks you gotta make. For any given action. So I've got squares firing, so I'm in the shitty level going on here. Actually, I didn't have to check. We get 1 hit. These are done sequentially, I believe. So I've got to check morale. I could break and get out of there before anything bad happens. And yeah, that cav was routed. So we didn't take as much damage as we might have. Now we go back to the firing. Find a conflict. Right here, these are two artillery that can see each other. Well, I started at the closest side for that and killed myself a couple more calves, so that's cool too. Artillery fire generally isn't intensive enough to, you know, create big holes or anything like that, but it can knock a few fairly large units out of play. We're running out of ammo. I've actually had a couple of units deciding not to fire, you know, here, because I got long-range shots that are available, but it's like, yeah, I'm not so sure that's a good idea. Let's let them get a little closer. Stuff along those lines. But yeah, even though, you know, I've got reserve artillery back here and everything, I don't feel comfortable firing, you know, where I'm likely to get a hit. I don't know, those guys are in column. I probably should have shot them. What would that be? That would be a long-range shot. That's the problem. So that would be here on the shitty 3 table. It's still not a bad shot, man. Yeah, I think I'll take it. Somehow I was misreading the column or whatever. I'm artillery at max range, but this is only a 4-point gun. I thought I took that into account. I think I was looking in the wrong row, to tell you the truth. And that's only a 5 or a 6. That's not a good shot. So, yeah, I think we pause that. Also, anyway. So we've gotten a little bit of fire underway. Starting to see some ammo depletion markers go out. I'm going to put a little pause before I get to the infantry fire phase. It's just every step of this game takes a lot out of me. You know, I just realized that the end of daylight savings time happened, which means very little to me. It's a weird situation. My clocks all stay the same no matter what. They always stay on daylight savings time, I guess, because that puts me in the same time zone as Arizona, which I was kind of used to, like all the time. I think there's 2 states, but it's definitely a state that does not honor the stupidity. But it does have an impact on raid ends up happening in the time that everybody else is following an hour earlier, which I don't know what that does to my life. Like, again, it's happening at the same time daylight-wise, but it may, I know it'll affect my Friday nights. I can leave later, which is kind of cool. But anyway, it was just kind of an intriguing thing to have noticed as on my way up. It was like, time on my computer is different than my time on my clock that I looked at. Why is that? Yeah, that's why. Okay. French won the initiative, and they're going to start over on this end. For good or ill, I'm not really sure. It's not like any of these count, but yeah, I think that's a little bit more interesting. I have some like problematic fires over here, but then the question again comes to, do the Allies just want to follow the French everywhere? Will they gain an advantage at some point? It's possible, but I think I've got more units, more firing opportunities here. It's really hard to make the count, so I'm probably going to go over on that end for the Allies, but I haven't decided yet. But anyway, I'm going to roll some of these up. I have like 10 minutes to raid, but I figure, screw it, it doesn't really make a difference. And after I got in my daily exercise, walking back and forth around the table, again, about 2/3 of the way through, I did okay, screw it. I'll just do the whole line on one side from here on. It is just, silly not to. But I have to make it clear enough that I don't get confused once I hit that point. A fair amount of shots in each side. We see an ammo depletion here, and I think a routing out of here. We got a hit somewhere else, didn't we? I see 2 ammo depletions. I think one caused here and one there. I don't know. The clusters are getting ugly. The important thing, though, is really the casualty numbers at this point. So you can see we're under 200 for the Allies. They're at 197. French are at 254. Ever since taking Hougoumont, another 15 points, going from 40 to 55. Yeah, that makes sense. The French are causing more casualties, it seems, at this point. Now, I have to keep in mind, I am not counting the routing units. Each routing strength point is a penalty. So honestly, if we get down to like 10 or 20, I got to start thinking real hard and paying attention to those. But I know that they will just introduce more error into the numbers if I'm constantly fiddling those back and forth. And lots of delay, lots of extra time in the game, just in a way that it's not worth doing. So I'm only tracking permanent losses over there. We are going to break and go do our raid addiction at this point. Anything massive change? Not really. This is beginning to collapse. We knew it would, This gun got its crew shot out from under it. I got a full 6 ammo on there, I think. Either that or it's depleted, I don't know. And I forgot to put an ammo depletion in there. It seems really odd that an artillery piece got up there. You know what? I'm almost convinced that used up its ammo instead. I'll put an ammo depletion under there, just to help remind me, because I'm pretty sure that's the actual fact. It's not going to make a difference. The French are going to march over it, and I've added rules to let them capture the guns early instead of just leaving them lying around on the field. It doesn't make a lot of sense to me, and it's more clutter than I want to deal with. Most games allow you to spike the guns or whatever and get them out of the way. The big thing is, this is a gun with no crew and no ammo. It is absolutely worthless except for those 3 victory points. Now, technically in the game, I think I'd have to garrison the guns to make sure I get the points, but I'd be doing that late in the game. Towards the very end. It's more trouble than it's worth. All right. I'll probably be back up at some point in the night to do first the Allied command and rally, and then the French movement, and then the Allied shock. And it still is just not gelling with me. It's so confusing to play this. The designer actually commented, and it's kind of interesting because I don't know if I mentioned it, but in a lot of ways, this and TSS came out kind of at the same time. And they were both the first SPI, at least. I don't know, La Bataille de Moscow, I think, came out earlier. I don't know. It's kind of hard to say Labatt is a regular fire and movement type game. It doesn't. There was definitely a desire on all 3 games parts to provide this sort of minis experience that board gaming had not been generating before. Now it's so weird. It's now board games come out with miniatures, but not using minis like rules, like just for the visual, and it really kind of fucks me up. But yeah, I mean, this was a huge thing, was let's produce something, you know, that you don't have to paint armies and have a huge outlay for terrain and all that. And if I'm not, you know, if I'm not going to have that stuff perfect, I don't want to do it half-ass for the most part, and try to represent battles in the same way that minis games do. And to me, that's a really appealing consideration. But, you know, essentially, each of these designers, Berg, Chadwick, and Davis here, were kind of doing something absolutely new, right? Converting minis games onto a hex grid and trying to take advantage of that hex grid as much as possible. So in a lot of ways, you really have to kind of you know, understand that there was a huge amount of innovation in each of these games. This is one that did not end up, like the mainstream didn't end up following it very well, I would say. And it's weird because it does have some definite advantages. It really does. Some of those advantages create a clunkiness. Would the sequence of play seem that weird if most of the tactical gunpowder games had that same sequence? Nah. Would kinks in, you know, how skirmishers work, how the fire and shock relate, you know, whether or not you're able to get in, would those work out? Yeah, they would have. I think if this kind of design had received more development in later years, it would have improved a great deal, a great deal. However, the further innovations kind of followed more on the Berg side of things than any of the than this and than the Chadwick side. The Chadwick side is, you know, I think it was Chadwick. I'm assuming, I may be wrong, but anyway, you know, so many games in Labatt have come out, sure, but outside of that, I don't know, other than Battles of the Age of Reason, I don't know too many, I don't know another system that like is trying so hard to capture the difficulty of maneuver that is much more easily handled with the minis, and translating it to hexes really created a painful situation, one which I find unsatisfactory. And then this one has a little bit of that. Yeah, I don't know. Additional development would have added streamlining, I think, to the system. It might have gotten to something better than where we are today with other systems. Anyway, such is. One can always dream of better realities than the one that we actually have. Getting on 6 a.m. on a Monday. Oh, I don't think this is my fault. Like some crustiness there. Discoloration. It feels almost like a rust residue or something. I don't want to think about it too much. I'm hoping it's not like poop. Okay. Although I'm sure any bacteria in it is long since decayed. Since I've had the game for over a decade, I think, without playing with that stuff. Oh, there's some more here. It looks like food or something. So the Allies called up a couple more units. Wellington brought these and these into play. I don't think there's anything else that I have access to yet. I want to get him down here and get some of this infantry. Maybe these guys too. That'll be the last of my infantry if I do that. and I've brought 20 units into play. I don't know, you know, I've got brigades that like never, you know, can never be deactivated, as it were, because they don't have any units, as far as I read it. I'm not really sure that's true, but they're like, should I just be able to pull them back and like the leader back and deactivate it? Well, I don't know, because I'll never be able to find the rest of the unit, you know, so I don't know. I might be cheating and leaving units on the map and everything. I find the command system and the penalties for it and whatnot to be, again, too cumbersome a situation. And now we're on the French facing in formation and movement. Oh, the Allies, yeah, they have a couple of routers cutting through. This guy tried to catch up, but he couldn't with this one. And he's still not going to be able to. He can catch this one, but that may just get off the board, or get to the edge of the board. Nate versus Wellington, they bleed at the edge of the board, losing a strength point each round. I don't know if that's the rules in this. I'd have to look that up. Another one over here. This one I can get Uxbridge over there to do something about. I think these were immediates, but the skirmishers coming back quickly, so at least there's that. Wonder what this is. Yeah, that's not supposed to be there. Excuse me. All right, on to the French, and yeah, like many things in the game, these mechanisms get in the way of being able to feel like you're playing it smoothly and everything. Actually, so if I declare a charge zone here, I activate these guys, and that charge zone doesn't actually buy me anything. I don't get anything in range. I was looking and I'm like, oh, Allied Cav wants to charge. Yeah, it doesn't. I don't want to activate that French Cav unit. Even though sometimes forcing a unit to activate is kind of cool and everything, this doesn't feel like the time for that. It could just run away and go deactivate, and that would only cost like 1 point on there. But bringing that Cav into play without any attack, I thought I was going to get an attack, but they don't. All right, back to trying to move the French. Right, so the French bringing some Cav up to threaten these, as well as to counter this situation here, given that my other Cav is disordered or routed and not in good shape. Pressing further up here, up into the hill. Here, this gun's out of ammo, so, you know, it's got its problems, but we're forming up a line to connect up here. We swarmed in and chased the leader away. I rolled a leader casualty check. I don't know if I should or not. I couldn't find a rule, but I didn't look very hard. We got parts of 1st Corps and 6th Corps forming up, the line getting kind of dense up there, or thick. Another command coming into play up here. I don't even know if I moved them. I don't think I did. What is that? That's 1st Corps stuff. Yeah, I was having trouble figuring out what I wanted to do with them. Let me move them as well. The Cav moving over to a river crossing to deal with this Cav, but I mean, it's sort of completely out of sync with everything else, but if I bust through here, I'm going to need support over there. Okay, so we got those guys up in line there. I looked over, I couldn't find anywhere I want to do a shock attack with the Brits. Again, it's such a bad idea overall. And that's going to put us to another morale turn. But we're not going to load up because we loaded up relatively recently. So we'll play for a little bit longer. We looked at the points, nothing much has changed. We haven't had a fire combat, we haven't, since the last looked over at the scores, and we haven't had any shock. For the French over here, I'm considering sending maybe another whole division of 6th Corps up there. Or maybe just a brigade, I'm not sure. I was gonna just send a brigade, but then I realized, wait, I haven't activated them yet, I can't. Still holding off on the guards. I would really like to mostly break the Allied army, or at least drive it off the ridges. And I don't think that's completely out of line with the amount of time I have left. It feels to me like the French are doing very, very well right now. Morning on Monday. Rainy days like this increase my already existing propensity for sleeping during the daylight hours. Luckily, I managed to do something, but it involved eating, among other things, that is going to keep me awake a little bit longer. Which is important because I do still have to go shopping. If I didn't have to go shopping, I think I'd just say fuck it. All right, we're on one of the cost turns, and it's a French command phase. Not a good turn to add new units, so we'll hold off. But there's other stuff that happens during command. Charges. You have to think about charges. And we'll define one right away. Back here to handle these skirmishers. Now this is a little fucked up because there are places I obviously can't charge, which I'm not going to check morale for. The main goal is to make these guys check morale and then to bust them up. But I'm also hitting this, which is a little iffy, but okay. I'll accept that that's a plausible charge. It's through a soft obstruction. It's conceivable the Cav could make it there disordered. Obviously I can't hit this, although that wouldn't be in range. But I think you have to, I think the charge rules probably should have some modifications for the morale effect they're going to have. I'm not doing that right away. That, I think, is the only charge that I've got. Those guys over there, they got to make it across the stream and whatnot. They're also out of range for it to be of any importance. So I'll be back when it's time to start moving the Allied units, I guess. French points down to the 230 point. We'll compare them to the Brits because the Brits are going to take their own 20 and be significantly lower. We got a router running free down here. Otherwise, I think I've caught everything, recovered them. Found myself, a route marker on top of a skirmisher. It attracted my attention. I moved a commander to rally. It wasn't needed. That kind of stuff. All that kind of thing is pretty common in this. All right, might as well move the Allies. I don't feel like I've done much yet. And the skirmishers rout in the face of the Cav. Now, their routing took them by a disordered unit, which got to shoot at them, caused another morale check, would have routed them again. But I don't think they should keep getting movement. I don't think they should be allowed to outrun the Cav, essentially, in the time period allowed. They're at the edge of the zone, and I feel like the Cav should have a chance to go slam into them, so we're not going to keep moving them. This is just one of those situations where I'm coming in and fiddling with the rules. Otherwise, they would route another 3 hexes, take some more shots. They might get disintegrated just the same, but screw it, man. Really. Zoom in here a little bit because, first of all, the Allies are definitely outmatching the French on their right flank here, on the French left flank, just beyond the Huguenot. These, mainly the Dutch here, but the King's German are in there too. Getting a lot of power and just pushing whatever's there back. This is probably where I need to commit forces if I need to commit anything anytime soon by the French. Some cav moving up. That, oh, where is he? Alright, I had a disordered unit over here. He ran back here under Clinton. I forgot to make a check for his morale early, but it's still in the proper sequence. Honestly, this is probably the best time that I should be doing it. He also routed and drew some fire from these skirmishers. I could have also fired at him with the artillery, but I'm down to 1 ammo on that artillery. So I'm going to save that fire for a formed unit. And although, you know, so shooting at routed units isn't particularly effective. They're down here on this shitty table, the same as skirmishers are on. It's not a great thing to do. And, you know, it's sort of not sporting. Now, the big thing is I want to try to break, you know, some of this stuff and take some of the pressure off until I can get some kind of reinforcements there. Most of my forces that went in this direction are here in the Huguenot, all filled with skirmishers, and these should be gone. Those came off in the command phase. Either that or they came off a lot earlier. Just didn't catch those. I caught another one earlier. But got to keep your eye out for crap like that. There's a lot of table to cover. Anyway, some of the Dutch are shifting their direction and heading this way. Meanwhile, the Cav are crossing through them. I feel like I definitely can use another Cav squadron or whatever brigade over here. You know, I'm thinking about, geez, I complain about the game a lot. Look, I complain about all games a lot, right? Don't be silly there. But I do complain about this one, I think, more than I do most tactical games. However, I am still getting that, this is a nice, big, meaty gunpowder tactical game feel from it. I'm not, even though I get lost in the sequence of play, and sometimes the complexities of the combat charts and whatnot, every now and then have to make a rule lookup nowhere near as bad as it was over in Summer Storm, if you recall that. That thing was a mess. But I'm getting a really good layout of what the battlefield is happening like, and it feels right in a lot of ways. The only thing that's not feeling good to me is the interaction of the skirmishers. They just, you know, people warned me they feel too powerful in this system, whatever. I didn't really get it in Ney versus Wellington. I'm not entirely sure why. I think it's got, there aren't rules to weaken the skirmishers in that particularly. There's a little bit. They can't be reattached. Okay, whoop, whoop. We're not seeing them getting reattached anyway. And actually, they should be able to reattach. That's just a complexity in terms of, you know, the counter stacking and everything that maybe you wouldn't want to deal with. The terrain there's a lot of nasty terrain. I just didn't feel that I was particularly advantaged by creating skirmishers. I think huge swarms of skirmishers in the woods could do something impressive, but the French were under such extreme speed restrictions that they weren't going to break down into skirmishers. Maybe the Allies needed to break down into more, and again, I think that may be why the French ended up winning, was that the Allies did not break into skirmishers the way they should. The problem I have here is skirmishers in open terrain, and honestly everything in open terrain. There is no shock combat because it's just too vile. You can't march into an enemy unit and expect to have a decent chance of hitting them. The fire combat is too too devastating, and it ends up de-emphasizing whatever shock is. Now, if shock is just bayonet charge, I'm okay with that. But what are we talking about? 100-meter hexes, I think, in this? 100-yard hexes, even bigger. Yeah, 100-yard hexes. That 1 yard distance or 1 hex distance feels like there's a lot of room for the really pressing the attack, right? I mean, if you're at 100 yards away, call it 50 as kind of more applicable, but still at 50 yards distance, firing at each other in this era, yes, that's a reasonable range for fire, but it's not what I would count as shock combat, right? Shock combat I count as a combination of the actual bayonet charge melee and whatever, but also that coming very close and firing as rapidly as you kind of can in ordered fire as you approach and prepare for the last, say, 20 yards of charge or whatever. So yeah, load up for one last shot, march forward, unleash, and then charge in. That whole tactic seems to be absolutely useless here, whatever that's meant to be. And when I look at something like the NBS or something, it really allows for the amount of shock combat that you expect in a Napoleonic battle. I'm not getting it here. I'm just not getting it. I'm getting something that in terms of flavor feels more like older versions of the NBS, with my predilection for just, relying on fire combat as much as possible, which is not sufficient in 3.0, or the Vive l'Empereur, but with a lot more mechanical complexity to the game to get you to that same place. So yeah, I'm really not feeling like infantry's, I'm not going to say that they have no offensive capability. They do. It's just based way too much on firepower, right? And if you make the infantry combat capabilities based too much on firepower, and I saw this in the early versions of NBS too, what you end up having, and maybe in Vive l'Empereur, what you end up having is you start making the artillery arm very powerful, and you're seeing that here. The artillery shreds things. First of all, in defensive position, no problem with that. But offensively, they become like little tanks, okay? They're not fast or anything, but once you can get them within a reasonable range, you can unlimber them and just start blasting stuff away. They should be a little too slow for that, right? When shock is a major component of attacking, when that really close firepower and then potentially the eventual bayonet charge is in there, that would slow down the artillery. Like what it does is it makes the assault break the enemy before the artillery can get there if you have a powerful enough force. And so you can kind of get more ground per hour or whatever by using the shock capabilities. If you're very careful and you drag your artillery up, keeping it screened and unlimber it and, all that kind of stuff, and then unscreen it and unleash, yeah, sure. It's a nice, deliberate, very precision form of moving forward and engaging the enemy. But that's not really how Napoleonic combat tended to go. The attacks tended to be, especially, early on for the French, and then everyone later on took up the, hey, you really have to be willing to close with the enemy and hit them in that shock combat. The only exception might be the Brits. but like the Brits relied more on firepower than anyone else did. But yeah, I really don't buy that I'm seeing the kind of combats to cause the effect that I'm seeing. I'm seeing an okay effect here, but not for the reasons it should be. and the whole thing with that is shock combat has been completely emasculated. It's a bit of silliness. I move some skirmishers in here and force this artillery to shoot. It kills them, but it takes away the shot on this thing. And we're rebuilding the Allied line along the ridge here, sort of, kind of. A little bit dipped down. Of course, this is in between the two, but I'm a little flung forward here. Just giving myself a little bit of power to push. I don't know what this leader is doing. He's in a stupid place. You should probably fling him back somewhere. He's one of those brigade commanders whose brigade is completely committed out here. I'll just move him back there. Wellington moving back to start throwing more forces in, although this is all cav. It's not really what I want to put in. Using Uxbridge as a rally commander. These guys, King's German coming up here as a second line because I don't expect this is going to hold. This is the weak point right here. Trying to back away out of a situation is ugly. I changed formation into this special squarish formation. Took some shot, not from the artillery, it's out of ammo. Yeah, we're going to have to pay attention to our artillery very shortly and start pulling it back and trying to figure out, you know, where can I find ammo, places like here, or can I just throw a gun crew in that or whatever. In some cases, you've got guns overlooking infantry, which works just fine in this system, as far as I can tell. Getting some problems here. So these guys are all in that special squarish formation. So is this guy if he needs to be. Kind of finding that, like, just leaving infantry without the extended line actually kind of works fine, and I probably shouldn't be worrying about these little square markers. As long as I'm using that option, it's okay. But then I start getting to some units that can't use it. Some Landwehr. And yeah, they're just having a hellish time deploying because they're too big. They can't drop a skirmisher off. They can't do anything to help themselves. They basically have to take a loss to become functional units. They're too big to maneuver on this size map. Now, this is where, like, the scale thing is crazy. It's like, it feels almost as if there was an intentional attempt to make these Landwehr so useless by making them just big enough to require the extended line. And that may be a kind of a design for effect thing in play here, where it's like, yeah, they'd be fine if they took some losses. That just doesn't, you know, it doesn't make sense, right? It leaves you with this kind of course, their morale would be even worse, but it's pretty piss poor anyway, as it should be. Anyway, where does that put me? That puts me at the French shock. Well, we know we have at least one, which is the cav attack here. I'll look to see if I have any others. It's unlikely, but if I'm facing a column of Landwehr, like I am up here, hey, maybe it's worth it, you know? And I'll do the calculations on that. But here's the thing. A French line, French regulars in line, have a morale of 3. The Landwehr has a morale of 2. I take a hit, which I already have here, and I'm weaker than that Landwehr. I have less manpower than it. It's not going to happen there. So, you know, the idea that French regulars, slightly smaller force, are afraid to charge Landwehr in column Okay, yes, I'm in line there in column, so it's going against me anyway. But let's say we were both in column, we'd be about equivalent. Well, if I was in column, my morale would be one higher, so yeah. Okay, never mind. It might be worth it, but it's still pretty damn iffy. Whereas in this situation where I'm deployed in line, I am definitely much, much better off shooting at them. And if they try to change formation or do anything, they're probably just not going to get a shot. You know? Or at best, they're going to get a disordered shot. So, like, yeah, it might be better to, well, it's all I'm getting from column anyway. But at least I got a higher chance of getting a shot. Because this has a fair chance of routing. Not great, but fair. 1 in 6, okay, pretty bad, but yeah, I mean, even if I were to like try to deploy into line or something, and there's just not enough room. Like this guy could have deployed into line, but no, he can't cross that shit. It's just yuck. So I'm finding a lot of units operating, you know, and if you played without the optional rule, a lot of the Allied units would just be unmaneuverable in the same way the Landwehr is, even if they're quality units, because, well, in a way the quality units are even worse because they have to get down below 4 strength to avoid the extended line penalty. And so, yeah, I just don't see anything I want to launch melee attacks with. It's just too, or shock or whatever. The only exception to that, of course, is my Cav, which I did. That was automatic. Routed them. There were only 3 there, so 3 hits on the chart, and that's going to put us over to the first of the 2 fire phases. And now I do need a break. And my battery says, charge me. It's boom boom time, and the Allies won the initiative. Now, I think they're going, and here I've got the, hey, which of these units is, you know, the furthest right on my line? I don't know. I feel like the only way is to say this one is, but it's a close call, and it's actually of some importance, because if I fire this one first, it can hit this gun, and it is about the only race that there is. I think you could actually make an argument that the line goes that way. So I'm going to do that. Give the Allies some advantage out of rolling the advantage here. And I'm not sure which way the French are going to go. I may, just for simplicity, follow the same path. Although, I don't know which is simpler, to be honest, because I'll have to keep alternating if they're working together in the same direction. But if the paths cross, I can stop alternating and just run one side down the table, which is actually a hell of a lot easier, even though the alternating keeps me on the same side of the line throughout, so that I don't have to reach as much. I do have to work a little harder going back and forth. All right, as I'm conducting the artillery fire, the French are done. They got to a point where everything that's left is out of ammo. But I come to this one and I notice, oh shit, I had a shock attack. Because of the way that I'm just sort of scanning and not able to really see, I think I'm going to look at this. Now, my first thought was it doesn't work, but I'm hitting from an enfilade, so I disorder them, which means my morale will be 2. Theirs will be 3. I'll be a 4-to-1. 400% at -1, which I think is an auto success, but I make a roll for a loss. I can't remember. It's like there's some things that are auto success, some things like routed units, some things that aren't. And so this is one of the few places. Now, it's only few because shock combat is so ineffectual, right? But what do we have here? It's under explanation of results. It's somewhere where it really doesn't belong, if I recall correctly. Yeah, it's under explanation of results, which is weird. When a shock attack is executed at a differential lesson, if it's -2 or better and a 400% or greater, oh, the attacking units are unaffected. They had to roll a die in Ney versus Wellington. They do not here. So I will capture those guns and spike them. I'm doing it out of order. That's life. If I wasn't low on T, I would slip them right into the reciprocal infantry fire. I want to take a look at another line of sight issue here, which is from here. This is a lower terrain, and this is here. This is sort of an edge case. The terrain drops here. I don't know what the calculation is. I think it's fine, because this is not at this height. If this were a clear slope going down with this height there, this game would block me. As it stands, this is a lower terrain level, as is this. Now this may give me a 2 multiplier, but I think that's the good multiplier. Let's see how it works. Actually, it's kind of weird because this is the blocking. This is the potential block. Let's do a calculation on it. I'm ruling that it can see, but it's really an edge case, because what I'm looking at is this gun is and I already fired it, so it's too late to change. This gun is sitting at, say, 10, height 10. This is sitting at 0.5, and this is sitting at 0. And if you kind of picture it, it's like a slope going down. If this were indeed absolutely a layer cake, it would work it would barely work. I'd be shooting just over their head. Now you can angle a little bit, but not a hell of a lot. The minimum fire range has to be grape shot, because otherwise grape shot's not accounted for in the game, which you probably can't angle over somebody's head. So you're going to want a clear shot. Of course, there's 3 ranks of these guys. So I wouldn't necessarily have to aim at the front rank, right? So keep that in mind as well. And there might be greater depth of troops in other cases. Let's see what this would do. I think this is going to allow it. Okay, we follow the order here. Count the number of hexes from the hex occupied by the higher unit to the hex which is higher than the hex occupied by the lower unit. That's going to be 1. I'm 1 hex away. When making the count, consider an obstructed hex. Note that if the LOS, which is considered higher than both, it's not. Okay, so I have a 1 here. The only way I can do it is to keep these numbers on each step. Count the number of hexes from the first hex, which is at the same level of elevation as the lower observing unit. That's going to be 1. Because it's inclusive, it's the hex that he's in. Next, determine the difference in elevation levels. That's going to be 1. Now multiply the hex count in 3 by the elevation difference, so that's going to be 1. And if the result is negative, you subtract one from the other. If the result is negative or 0, the 2 units can observe each other. So again, that's going to just barely give me an observation. The main reason I'm going with it is not that I feel terribly comfortable with what this system is doing, nor when I picture the situation, because honestly, again, these are not, it's not a layer cake. The terrain is gently sloping, okay? It's not like, and this game treats these as lips similar to my hill, right? Where it just drops off. It's not that way. So if that's the case, then I'm not really 10 higher because I'm close to this. And this is not really, you know, two hexes that are near each other are not a 10 meter drop, right? They just aren't. It's that over those two hexes, there is a 10 meter drop. So the actuality, because they're both in the half spot of the hexes, is probably, it's more like a 5 meter drop, and I'm really iffy about firing the guns beyond that. It's probably gently sloping down everywhere anyway. And, you know, I mean, even a 5 meter drop it might be too much, but it's over distance, right? It's a slope going down. So I don't know what to do, you know, but in terms of making the battlefield advantageous for the defender holding the ridgeline, I think it's absolutely vital that I allow this shot. So the game allows it. My feeling about the scenario says it should be allowed. Those guns could be deployed a little further back in the hex, whatever, so that they have a better sight. They could be deployed on, you know, a tiny hillock or whatever. They're going to be in the best place for observation. There's no question about that. That's what the battery commander is going to do. The troops aren't going to really be worrying, but they're going to be within... They're going to be at least at the halfway point in the hex. So whatever, you know, like these guys might actually be engaging, in which case it's too close. There's no concept of like continual melees and whatnot. Wow, I've used up a lot of battery on all this. Anyway, we had some successful shot. Again, the ammos are running low. The guns are going to have less and less of an impact on the game. And then the ammo at something like this, that's behind my own lines that I can grab, becomes all the more valuable. One nice thing the Allies have, well, the French have a lot of artillery they're not using too. I really ought to unleash the guard at some point just to get that artillery moving. But yeah, it strikes me as the artillery that's engaged is really running low. We do have some reserves to bring up, and we want to do that at some point. I must be in a better place mentally than usual. Instead of sitting down and watching like a half hour of videos and far exceeding the amount of time it took to do my tea, I moved a couple of buckets worth of earth or mulch or something to my hill. Stuff off my roof that... All right, it's infantry fire. Let's see. The Allies are going to get first shot. Where do they want to start? So they're very sparse here. That can be advantageous because I'll be jumping all the way to here very quickly. Do I need the shots here first? I feel like the French are kind of sparse there, and I'm going to be going at a density. I'm going to get most of my shots anyway, so I'm going to start over at that end. Again, just using simple heuristics, not, you know, not overly worrying about it, which means the French are almost certain to start at this side again. Going to be more problematic than the artillery fire always is, because there's a lot more infantry fires. Opportunity I realize I miss, and again, it's because shock combat is not at all scary, right? Like, from the defender's point of view, yeah, fuck it, let him come. is moving some of these landwehr down to be closer. Especially where I'm in line formation and I'm looking at columns of enemy forces. That might be to my advantage to have moved down there. Unfortunately, I wouldn't have maintained the whole line. Maybe I didn't have enough movement to get there and in position, whatever. But it's just something to keep in mind. Touch on something. The rules that affect the cannon up here would also affect the infantry units that are up there. Unfortunately, here I'm positioned at the same height, I believe, as well, this guy. This guy is at the same height as him. I gotta check each of these. Yeah, I'm not good with. So he's at a lower height, so I get to fire both of these. And I think with this as well, which is a real advantage, having the density there. Since the two markers have passed each other, I'm just doing the French fire across the line, but I did note one thing. There is a disadvantage to that kind of in-depth fire positioning, where you're, on a rise above the units below you, which is that if you got crappy units up there, they're going to route through the second line, and just like the density, any kind of density is dangerous in this kind of game. You want to leave retreat channels, but you also want that additional firepower. So it's like, I don't know which way to go, but we've got a route caused another route and caused a disorder next to it and whatnot. It caused the unit here to get fired at, so I get an additional fire with this French line here, and all kind of cool stuff there. I had to reload my pipe. That's why I have my dice over there to indicate where I'm at. As a note for how much, the fire combat, the infantry fire especially, takes time-wise. This is my second pipe reload on this fire. I also, during the movement, I quite often have to reload whatever. So, yeah, there's a lot going on, right? But that's to be expected in a tactical game of this nature. I'm going to highlight a big part of the attritional combat here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different units firing. All have a 1 in 6 chance of hitting that thing and just destroying it, This is not a particularly important point, but I want to clear these. At least to here, I don't really have to worry about these. I think in order to try to get an attack on the flank. Right now, the Allies are winning this flank. The center, it looked like, so there's kind of two centers, right? There's a left center and a right center for the French. The right center and the whole right flank looks pretty evenly matched right now. It's not actually, because the Allies have a lot of landwehr on the line, and we're seeing the effects of that. But over here, some decent units are coming back up on the hill here, and they've kind of repulsed the French from the advantage that they have. If I can get this into play, that might, because there's a big gap right here. It's not that big a gap. I got another decent unit coming into play there. So I don't know. I don't know how bad it is. But now it's time for me to finish up all the mess of the British fire over here. Well, some King's German and some Dutch too. After the fire, we're at 220 to about 180. So it's about a 40-point difference now. I think the Allies got the better of that. I don't ever remember, but 40-point difference was within the range of what things were before the Huguenot fell. Now, again, it may not entirely count because there's a fair amount of Allied routed units on the board. Yeah, there's a couple French routed units. But again, that's sort of I don't know if it's a fixed number, but it's a number that goes up and down and kind of targets around a certain mean, you know, of how many points of routed strength there are. It probably ranges under 20 for the most part across the board, which just means that, like, you know, it's not really an effect on here. And again, it's recoverable, so I don't really want to be considering it too much when I'm looking at the situation. But remember, if allies are going to just, we're right about to hit their command phase when they're going to lose another 20 points. So that puts it to 60, which actually feels a little higher. So maybe the French are actually doing better gun-wise. I forgot. I meant to mention that, and then I forgot completely about the fact that, like, that applies when I did my assessment. Yeah, I think the French actually did better, because I think we were in the mid-50s before this fire phase. And that comports more with what my feelings had been about the fire. Although we got like an ammo depletion here and here, that means we got some kills. Okay. What is the situation like? Not much has changed. The routes here I had already mentioned. We're not really impacting stuff here. We killed some cav, which is always useful. I feel like cav should count for more, same way like guns do, because it's harder to replenish, you know. Does it act, so here's the question. It would count for more and is done in such a way in games where we're just worried about victory points of casualties. But that's not really what we're worried about here. We're worried about the army morale breaking. And cav units getting shot up doesn't really impact the army morale exceedingly heavily. It might impact victory conditions later. So, like, I would kind of think after the battle is decided, the point spread, you might want to double the value of the cav at that point. It's, you know, but there you're just looking at the margins of what you're talking about after the battle, you know, in terms of recovery and whatnot. But yeah, cav tends to be more expensive and more difficult to deal with, and also something, well, to replenish, and something that you really don't want your army to be without outside of the battlefield. Cavalry in the Napoleonic era is really important on the battlefield, but cavalry in just about every era until you get to World War I, I guess, it serves a really, really important purpose outside of just the actual battlefield situation. And certainly in the Napoleonic era, it had an incredible, you know, scouting, screening, stuff like that going on. All right, I'm going to pause for a bit, come back for the Allied command and rally, and then the French movement. And then Allied shock. It's just so, it's so interleaved. It's just so weird to me, right? And honestly, it was weird to me when I first started gaming, before I was familiar with like the I go, you go type mechanism. So I think one of the reasons for I go, you go is that it's really, really easy to grasp. You know, it's my turn, I get to move, I get to fire, I get to melee, whatever. It's much, much easier to keep the grasp that it's my turn, sort of. Here, it's a harder concept to get a hold of, and it's a harder concept to get a hold of that very, very few games have taken advantage of. And I think it actually does a lot of good in this one. Again, I've got my problems with this, there's no question. And some of them derive from that. But it also does some stuff really, really well. Myself an omelet and a little relaxation time. Now it's time for the Allied command phase. I'm not going to activate any new unit, any new brigades here. but I take that 20-point hit, and that gives me a fair estimate here. So, yeah, we're looking at 220 to 160. That 60-point difference is a big deal. And then, well, I got to check cav. I got to check if there's any cav I want to fire off, and then I'll just do the rallies. But I may be back if I've got charges to lay down. Not sure I do. Well, I got some cav here. Yeah, I'm almost certainly going to. And I'm carefully avoiding getting these guys in by making them do a morale check. I'm going to fire off both my cav stacks here. I got more cav coming to replenish. Try to win the fight over here. It's sort of a waste in terms of, hey, look at all the, morale checks I can force by just putting someone under one cav charge zone, and they're close together. But by doing two of them together, there's a few units in here that I would like to charge. There's some disordered infantry here. That's not going to be able to form square. That's a good hit. There's cav here. There's these guys back here, some cav, I think a routed unit. All kind of neat stuff that I can just plow away. So, one way or another, I'm going to get some attacks in, and that sounds appealing to me. Over here, my cav is within range, but I don't think I can charge across the bridge. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Well, actually, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, I don't have anybody in vision within the cone, so I would not be able to. Rallying is going to be a pain in the ass. I got guys running for the edges, all kind of problems like that. And then the French will be making their checks over there during their facing formation phase. Although I haven't been up here long, I'm going to get routers heading all over the place here. Here, all over here. Having trouble finding enough commanders to rally them. Rally in Ney versus Wellington allowed you to be adjacent. Here you have to be stacked, so it's really tough. It's also a bigger map, more room for shit to spread out and cause problems. So we're definitely having an issue with that. And you have to be the right nationality or the right command line. So, although I haven't been up here long, I'm taking a break. I have to go do my duty. But I should be back sometime soon. Although, with daylight savings ended, life is a different pattern. So I may not be up before it's dark. I don't know. Well, I went down and was wearing my my decent pair of glasses, which are sturdy and whatnot. It's the only way I can really tell them apart. I guess I could look at the lenses. I can tell when I'm playing a game. I can't tell most other times whether or not I've got these. These tend to be cleaner. The other ones are so scratched up at this point, which is why I can tell when I look at the lenses. But yeah, so I'm like, okay, let's just come up. I did the checks. We had a couple of infantry routing out of the area. The cav is sticking around though, so I've got some interesting targets no matter what. And then I got cav back here, but I don't know if I want to hit that. We shall see. All right. And even with the doubled movement, I'm running away. That'll get me in position where I can use this cav to protect the units that have run away. So, yeah, those cav charges are going to fail. They're just not going to find anything to hit. I got my French march done. Falling back from the cav charge. I'll have to take at least the 3 hexes there, which we could avoid hitting this if we so desire. So, whatever. But I think this unit is not going to be in such a healthy place. 1, 2, yeah, he's pretty much got to hit it. So we will be hitting that during our melee. What else is happening? I don't know if I removed the wrong people's ammo depletions. I can never remember. Is it command phase? In which case I skipped the Brits, but I did it during the march phase. It doesn't matter. They both get them back by the time anything happens. So it kind of just really doesn't matter. I mean, yes, it would matter actually for shock combat. But again, we're on the Allied shock phase. I don't remember where the French ones were. I think I fucked up, and I think they were supposed to be, I should have removed the Allied ones instead during the command phase. Developing the line forward here, we took out that gun. And again, I'm cheating with that. Just be aware. You know, it doesn't matter. Who's this guy? Got this commander. He should probably move. He's getting himself 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 into position to activate any of those cav that he wants. I don't really feel like doing so, but I don't know. He might as well be there. Covered what few routers I have. I'm doing much better in that position. Getting some force here on this flank, even despite not being able to clear that. Just like there's still some struggle over here near La Hassan. When that falls, that's another 10 points. I highly doubt the Brits want to make any other shocks other than the Cav, but I probably should look, but I'll do the Cav first. Failed our morale check for countercharge, which means we'll be facing the impetus bonus. And it's 8 strength points against 6. Both have leaders. Both are 5 morale. So our total is 100%. Right? No? It's 125. It's 100% at +1 because of the charge bonus, which isn't too bad, you know. We hoped for better. We're going to get a DR and force them out of here. I have a flank attack that I could make on this artillery if I march up this way, but each one of these would get a morale check. The whole unit would become activated. I don't want to do that, although Riley is coming close. Yeah, that's minimum range anyway. Yeah, you know, I don't know if I have to be activated Cav to do a charge. Let me check that for the opportunity charge. I'm tired of checking things. We'll just move to here. Get ourselves disordered up there. Technically, I should have had to make a check here, but I'm not going to do that. Why? Because I should have done it with this one too. I don't know. I'm just kind of playing fast and loose at this point. I have not checked other units. I got to get those things off. A couple places where there are okay opportunities. Trying to find the one in particular I was looking at. There's one where I'm here. I could attack this skirmisher. Of course, the skirmisher's higher morale than me. Is it high enough? I don't know. Hey, you know, it's like, it's a 5. I am at best a 4. British units are good in line. I'm actually a 3. So I'd be going in at -2 if they get a hit on me, which they have a chance. They end up just disordering me and sending me running back, which is not a good result, right? These guys, I've got this square back here to remind me they're in that 3-rank formation. This one's a lot more appealing, where I'm be attacking. There's nothing here. Oh no, there's a unit there. I thought that was just a leader alone. Yeah, that's not a good option. Because I'm going to get shot by 2 units. I'm almost certainly going to be reduced even more. But one of the main things I'm looking at is, you know what, it's going to break up my line to make this charge. Unless it's going to be sort of conclusive, I don't really want to do it. So, we're going to call that the end of the turn. And these Prussians getting awfully close. I really ought to dispatch something to deal with them. But I don't want to do it on the turn that I pay for it. So this upcoming turn, I think I've got to send some stuff over to protect against that. Napoleon was not shocked that the Prussians showed up at this point. I think Wellington had a better idea that they were showing up earlier in the battle, but I think that Napoleon's attack is actually predicated on the fact that, like, it was clear to him that the Prussians were coming and not Grouchy's force. All right. I guess I'm trying to debate whether or not I want to load it up, but I don't think I do. I don't think it's been all that many. Let's just keep going. You know, it's a lot earlier than I feared. It's 6 o'clock my time, 5 o'clock real time, or whatever. And I came up here because I can't play raid. Like, I want to withhold my play for several hours, actually, so that all my energy comes at the right time. And I came up here and I started thinking, I don't really want to do this either. I don't know what I want to do. Maybe I want to nap. Maybe I want to read something else. But I had some thought that I wanted to express, and now it's passed me by. It has passed me by. I don't remember what it was. Oh yeah, I know what it was. I wanted to take a quick look at how many points of routed stuff is out there for the Allies. 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, say. We're just going to say they're about 5 each. So yeah, it's probably a little higher than I expected, but still, it's, you know, it's a noticeable component at this point. But anyway, I think I'm going to try to find something else to do on the computer. I just really don't want to play this right now. Probably pull up some kind of game on GOG or whatever, and because I've picked up a few freebies and whatnot. I don't want to get into anything too complex and painful, but I also I don't know. I don't want to just fart around for several hours. It's Tuesday, election day, and yeah, here in Oregon we vote way, you know, a week in advance or so. They give us our mail-in voting, and that went out pretty much the day I got it, for whatever little it matters. Most of the races aren't even contested. Anyway, I've been up here a couple of times and wandered back down. I've pretty much wasted last night. First, just again fucking around on the computer. Yeah, I pulled an interesting little life simulator down. Actually, it was in the browser, and played that for a while, and then played another game that was similar, another text adventure type, multiple choice type, choose your adventure type thing that I was having fun with, but you have to buy it to continue playing. And I wasn't having enough fun to buy. I mean, these are things I'm just doing to waste time, much like with Raid. And then I got to play Raid and had a lot of, had a lot to do because I didn't do anything during, the normal interchange basically. But I did try to come up here a couple of times and just walked away with this, oh, I don't want to do this. I also tried to download a game and couldn't get it to run on my computer well. And I've tried to do it before, so with the same game. All right. So let's actually buckle down and try to do some stuff. We're on the French command phase here. I believe. I don't know, because I don't have a marker there. And my dice are over here, not where they belong, which should be up there. But I think I was ready to do the command phase and then gave up. I'm going to commit the last of my regular infantry, some of the 1st Division of 1st Corps here. I'm going to send it that way. That'll put me in the mixture where I can move to deal with the Prussians if I need to, but it also might be able to help me roll up that flank where I'm already doing okay. And then the remainder of 6th Corps, which is back here. Still not going to commit those guards yet. I'm a little afraid of them because I'm playing with the optional rule that causes them to cause problems if they fail, and I'm afraid of that. So that's going to be 4 more brigades added. I figure I've got a decent lead in points, but my goal is to break the Brits or the Allied army, the Anglo-Allied army, whatever, as quickly as I can. Even if I can't do it in time before the Prussians start showing up, if I can get them broken, I can then turn the might of the French army. Although it'll be a lot weaker because I think the Prussians come in with like 300 and something morale as well. In which case I'm like, I can't really attack. The other big thing I do during the French command phase is cav charges. None of the cav here is in good order. There's some back here, but they're not positioned properly. Riley's heading over here for that weird 2nd Corps cav that's way off at the end, away from the rest of his command. He didn't start out anywhere near it, so I don't know. And Ney has cav here, but I don't want to commit. I've got a couple of divisions of cav that I can throw in, but I don't want to commit them. Over here, I could launch some charges, and you might argue it's worth it. The problem is there's a big stack here, and this guy's kind of hiding behind the city. I don't think I can hit him without disordering. So there's no good charges in play there, but I'm across the river or stream or whatever it is. I mean, it's pretty major because I can't cross it except at the roads. And in a position where, okay, at least I'm positioned to deal with that cav so that it can't harass me if I come breaking through. Rally, I'm going to look up when the ammo depletions are supposed to be removed. It's not going to make a difference. But if I was wrong about the English ones, they come off, during their facing formation phase. I can't remember those little things. I did it wrong. It was supposed to happen during the friendly command phase. So the Allied ones should be gone already. The French ones should be coming off now. In the command phase. Not in the rally, where it would make sense, and not in, although it's essentially the same, and not in the facing formation. That's why it's confusing me. It's like in a weird place. Wow. Okay, I get it. I take things easy and break again. The rally phase is actually one of the weird little pain points in the game. I don't know if it's just because things have gotten to a point where there's well, clearly, there's a lot of units that are disordered and routed. Units that are disordered without a leader on top, that's fine. I just pick that off, right? Except if it's in a minimum range fire zone. But units which are with a leader on top of them, whether disordered or routed, are kind of problematic. I have to get the disorders first. Well, I'm lazy. So I'm kind of like picking through, and everything that's got a leader on top, I just resolve at once along with the routeds. But there are enough in clusters here, like where the cav hits have been happening and whatnot. There are enough of them that I might lose track. And especially where a unit's routed, there's a couple of actions you have to take. You have to remove the leader, remove the counter, or flip the counter from routed to disordered. You might have to reface, reposition. Facing doesn't matter when you're disordered, but I do it for convenience in there. You might have to reface and reposition the marker underneath. Now, I don't remember if that was routed. I'm guessing it was, whatever. And it's just so many little mechanical actions. And the fact that, like, every time I flip a unit, it flips the wrong way. I don't know. I don't know how to put this. But the actual unit counters here, for whatever reason, they flip from that to that. You have to do the front to back flip, which is actually advantageous, and I've gone over reasons for that. But it's confusing me, and I'm ending up facing in the wrong direction or whatever when I do that. So then I rotate it, whatever. I think some of it has to do with having too many things in my hand at once. And I end up accidentally flipping leaders and not sure which side they're on and everything. So we're getting a lot of, like, during this phase, I'm getting some frustration from the whole, yeah, I don't know if I'm actually, like, retaining the game state the way it's supposed to be. Very irritating when I face this kind of irritation, especially when I've been away for a little while and am kind of feeling avoidant about the game again. I was having a kick with it, but I think I kind of ran out of gas at some point on the last turn, or right after the last turn. Whatever happened, my incentive and desire to play has dropped considerably, and that makes these little hassles more and more problematic. And I don't know why. I mean, I understand the connection between those two. What I don't know is, I don't know why the desire kind of faded. I was having a really good time for a little while, and now I'm like, really not into it. To do with gaming, but not to do with this particular game. I noted that I just got a notification, Stellar Horizons, which I loved. I've got it down here, I guess. Oh, it's too dark to see shit. Which I really had a great time with and wanted to play again, just for fun factor rather than like, ooh, I really want to try these new things and whatnot with it. They're coming up with a sequel. I just got the Kickstarter announcement for it. I'm not going to do it because I don't really do Kickstarters. I'm hoping I'm not going to be alive long enough for that to matter. The P500 is different, right? With P500, I'm like, yeah, sure. I'll order this and you will ask for my money later and I'll sign up and pay at that point. Kickstarter is different in that I have to pay ahead of time, and then I just have to track it and pay attention to, it becomes this burden in my life to deal with. So, although that is something that I would automatically P500 if Compass had a P500. I think they did at one point, I don't know. If they did something like a pre-orders type basis where they didn't collect the cash up front, yeah, I would definitely go ahead with it. Kickstarter is so weird because they're offloading the cost, like they're not getting all the money. They're paying Kickstarter, and they have their own online store and everything. Now, maybe their online store also, you know, maybe somebody runs that for them and they pay about equal percentages either way or whatever. But I assume they just kind of bought an online store out of the box, which means they paid up front for something pretty common. But the idea of pre-orders and stuff may not work well with that. Whatever. all I know is that I refuse to do Kickstarters. I refuse to do anything where. But what I was thinking was, you know, they're giving away some of the money essentially, but of course they're getting it up front instead of as one normally would with a pre-order. So whatever, you know. Yeah, slept a little. Well, most of the day away. Not too unusual there. And then played some Raid, and kind of at a point where I shouldn't be playing Raid anymore today for a while. And it's either this or sit and watch the election stuff trickle in. So I'm on the Allied facing formation. Okay. I don't see any charge zones, so all right, let's just start moving some stuff. Throughout the game, it's been a hard call for me about these kind of situations. I'm facing a column here. No, I'm facing a line here. It's hard to see because the counters aren't cut very well. So like the white border that's supposed to be underneath isn't as visible as it should be on that French piece. The Allies are facing a column here. I've got landwear. You know, I'm facing a line. I'm in column. I could change formation, and then I attract fire, and that fire will be as bad as what I'm getting. 50-50 chance of getting hit. Really good chance I'm disordered, and then it doesn't matter that I'm in line anymore. And a little harder to hit after that. But whereas if I leave it alone and get my shot going out, and also if I do take that hit, like there's a chance I route. I've got enough routing problem. I'm probably going to route anyway, but just all kind of things that are going to sort of collapse this line a little bit too quickly for my taste. It also has to be an extended line, which would mean it would go into here. And although it's not set up for it yet, it might end up in a flanking fire situation. It's just once you make contact, it's really hard to change the parameters or to convince yourself it's worth doing, right? Okay, not a whole lot of movement along the Allied lines. Kind of tried to strengthen things along here. I actually backed away from this, but not backed away, but turned around, took my shots, took my medicine, and walked away from my situation there. Not going to do it here. That's kind of a hard point or a soft point, as the case may be, because it's soft cover. But Prince of Orange coming over here, he's got a Dutch unit he can rally. Wellington's actually marching around trying to rally stuff. As commander of the army, he can do that regardless of whether or not he can speak their language. This guy, he's still chasing this unit. I don't know if he's going to catch it. The French were too close, so he's still slow in movement. I've got some excess leaders, but they're not on the right units. So I've got like Uxbridge. He's thinking he's heading out this way. I basically don't want to commit more forces. Although I really would like to get these guys in. I felt like trying to recover this unit. Is it a decent unit at least? You know, it's kind of a piece of shit. Maybe I'm better off just bringing those up into line. I don't know. I think my line's going to hold. That's my bet. And it's not like I'm bringing these landwehr here that Hill has under his command into play. I am bringing these Dutch infantry, most of which are pretty shitty, forward. There's a couple decent units and some crappy militia type stuff towards where I see a weakness here. I didn't bother with this. What the hell's going on there? Oh, that's why. Okay. I do have a hole there that I need to plug. I think this might hold, throwing some of the King's German up. Over here, we have the Dutch continuing their outflank. I may just shoot those cav. I've got additional cav coming into play here. Oh, what's up with him? He probably should have gotten out of there. There would have been room before. I got like a couple disordered cav up in the front. But there's cannons facing me. Oh, shit. That's going to be ugly. Yeah. Nothing much changing here. Just a clusterfuck. That's going to put it on the French shock. I'll look to see if I have anything. I doubt it, but... And let me think about those English calves, see if I can do something about them. It's where it might be worth shocking. This is a hard cover here. I don't want to go through that. That's like a 2-point modifier, I think, to the shock, right? Yeah. Is like an attack here through the soft cover. It's a -1. I'd be going, but I'd take a shot first, then I'd be down. And I've got the advantage with firepower, and also I'm not in any particular hurry to get this guy out of there. Yeah, he'd need an extra strength point, on the line or whatever. But for the most part, I'm just rolling this out, and basically 6s hit, and nothing else much does. Yeah. It's possible a big stack could hit on a 5 or a 6. But otherwise, you take an auto... if you hit something, you take an ammo depletion. Again, not worth it. Probably not even possible. There's a candidate. Let me go look at that end. I'm seeing a few down there. I can't convince myself. Even where I have an advantage, I'm not in the kind of hurry I was in Ney versus Wellington. So here, I'd be attacking uphill. That would hurt me. They're disordered. They might hit me. Not likely, but they might. And if they do, chances are I'm disordered as well, so no advantage there, right? So... I'm like, it just doesn't seem worth it. I have the advantage in the firing, right? There's very little situation where it is worth launching a charge. Here, for example, let's take a look at it. I'm looking at, I have 2 morale. I'm as bad as he is. No height advantage either way. And again, I'd take a shot. At best, I'm looking at kind of an even odds, not counting the fact that I have to take a shot going in. Here, almost obviously, there's a leader there that's not going to be fun. So yeah, I'm going to, again, pass on shock combat. I feel like shock combat is completely destroyed, except for where it comes down to the cav. Cav shock can do a lot. Mainly, though, the threat of the charge, beginning the charge, causing those morale checks, those are the biggest effects of the cav. You don't really necessarily want to actually contact with the cav. So, yeah, that means we're going to be going into the fire phases. I don't want to do them yet. It's too much effort, man. It's too much effort. Frenchie wins the artillery initiative. And there's some places where there are guns. I mean, these can't hit each other because they got closer targets they can hit. So, but I think that's the closest to there being an actual conflict. I'm just looking around. So it probably doesn't matter. I think I'm going to start over on this end. Just because that'll get me in that area more quickly. And who knows, you know, a routing unit might cause issues or something. But for the most part, I don't see any possibility. Hey, this is something I have never, I just noticed this. Not only does it have letters for the map, some games don't even have that, but it actually gives you where they're supposed to go. Now, this is not a complicated map, you know, it's just 4 pieces and you can pretty quickly see what aligns with what, but it's a really clever little move there, I think. A little bit more careful with my artillery. I actually moved some units that are out of ammo into position to fire, and because the ammo state, you know, is handled below them and is another counter, right? So I think it would have made more sense to deploy ammo with each gun at the beginning of the game, especially since I'm using 2 different types of markers, right? And one without ammo, without a counter under it, would be easier to determine. Of course, they all have 1 counter under them already with a crew, so I don't know. You know, it's a painful situation. I actually chose not to fire this gun down here and awaken those cav. Feels a little cheap. It's like, yeah, I got a lined up flank shot on some cav. Why would I not take the shot? Well, because the way things work is that those can't be brought into play until the command phase. They don't get a chance to move, to shift, to change their facing or anything until my next shot. The only real reason I would want to do it is to keep pressing this advance that's going forward. But I actually don't have that many troops on this line anymore. Cav versus Cav, if I get that into place, but it's not quite in place yet, the Allied shock phase, which would come after the French movement, would allow me to, you know, project an attack on these, and it would have been worth bringing them into play at that point. But I think everything's going to work really, really well if I hold off. If I do it now, I'm doing it too early and I'm activating them. But realistically, I've got unlimbered guns 200 yards away from the flank of some enemy cav. You think it would wake them up. Maybe I'm missing something. I better look. 3 things that can activate. One is being in command radius and your commander deciding to activate you and bringing you in. Second is the instant you have to make a morale check. That's where I stopped. There is a third one, but that's if it comes on the board. I kind of forgot about that third one. One of the reasons I checked is that, yeah, sometimes I do get to the rule I want to find and don't go any further. I may have seen that before. That's going to put us on the infantry fire phase. Do I want to? I think I want to break again. Taking things easy. Watching vids on the miserable election results. Well, should be interesting. That's all I have to say. You know, at the very least, I don't think we're going to see any kind of really serious machinations around trying to declare the whole election false. If we do, I don't know what the hell has happened to this country. And I don't think we're going to see too much in the way of, like, you know, we may see some outbursts, but I don't think we're going to see anything organized like January 6th was or anything like that. One can hope. Yet all the same, We shall see. That's all I, as the ancient Chinese proverb or curse, may you live in interesting times. I kind of feel like interesting times have been rolling slowly into happening, and now, and not just in the U.S. and not just surrounding anti-democratic forces in the democracies, but also I just won the initiative role for infantry fire, and things are sparser over here. I think that gets me to the meat more quickly. This stuff's not going to break. We got the advantage over here. We're going to get shots in no matter what. So, we start over at that side. And I'm pretty sure that the French will start at this side. I'll take a moment. There's an interesting, and I think I mentioned this before, in either this or in Navy versus Wellington, but there's this interesting trade-off, even in fire combat, where units in line may lose a point of morale. The French generally do. And that means that, some little shot like I just did here, disordered unit ends up routing a perfectly fine French line by doing one hit on it. So the lines are really, really fragile comparatively, right? That could not have happened if I was in column. Of course, if I was in column, I would be firing on the disordered table myself, no matter what, right? But it's just kind of interesting. It's if I'm gonna get the first shot, being in line is definitely an advantage. If I'm not gonna get that first shot, and there's nothing you can kind of do, I guess you could kind of weight one side of the table to column and one to line for the more resilience but worse shot capability. I don't know. That would definitely be an incredibly gamey thing to do. But the system encourages thinking along those kind of lines as opposed to, what you would expect out of standard doctrines or whatever. That too, you have to make the decision kind of early. So I have a unit that was in line here that got disordered. I don't think the Brits are better in line. They have good morale. Their morale does not drop in line the way the French generally tends to. I'm hoping the guards are good in line too, honestly. I haven't checked them. I doubt it. Yes, they are. Okay. Well, at least there's that. Because the fact that, they can break is disturbing enough to me. Just on, without even taking casualties, they can still shake. They can shake, they can't break. But it is really, really weird to me to, if you deploy into line at 2 hexes so that you can approach the enemy and take less damage, essentially, the long-range fire may disrupt you, and so you can't go forward. But if you're in column, it's a lot less, or it's a little less likely to, whatever. Oh, weird effect. My tweezers, and they're not like this normally, I don't think, I don't know, have become magnetized, or else the piece of metal inside there has. And that's the end of the reciprocal fire. I gotta find my thing. Again, I did the switch Giroux in between. What happened? Well, you can see there's some ammo depleted markers. There's also a routed skirmishers that got driven out. Also some routed skirmishers over here that got driven out. So a fair amount of exchanges over there, not of too much importance. Over here, the Allies weren't really within range to fire. Let's jump to the other side. We got rid of a problem here. We got rid of another problem over here. But I guess the biggest thing out of everything that happened is the land where I was trying to patch this hole with. Now, there's a line of regulars ready to move into place. But the land where I had patching the hole, that all broke. unable to hold a line. And, you know, I mean, there's like no good answer for it. If it's in column formation, kind of long-range fire can knock it out and send it scattering by causing a casualty. It still has a pretty lousy 2, which, sure, a 2 means there's a 1 in 6 chance it routes. But if you're able to concentrate fire against a single unit or something, it makes multiple morale checks and it's just out of there. So, yeah. And then there's, you know, the collateral effect of units. You know, a unit breaks next to you, you're disordered, now you're a better target, and you just go down the line and you just send them all running. That's going to put us over to the second half of the turn. Allied command and then French movement. Going to break. Don't know whether I'm coming back up tonight. I kind of like to get to sleep because I really should go shopping tomorrow. I'm already kind of hedging it. Should go. I must go, but Thursday's not supposed to rain either. It's just not supposed to be as pretty. Let's take a look at the numbers, though. Brits are down to 140 or so. French are at 205, say. Well, let's say they're at the same. They're within 1 of each other here. So 130, 200. So it's a 70-point difference. The French are definitely getting the edge right now. And if I count in the routed units, I think the Allies have more routed units on the board. And they're definitely having more trouble gathering them up. The French have a lot of leaders on the board that they can play around with. But again, we saw that was probably less than 30 points. And yep. All right. We'll do one cheap thing since I remember it. I'm going to remove, and I think there's only one ammo depleted marker from the Allied units. Here it is, Wednesday afternoon. It's not supposed to rain either today or tomorrow. It's supposed to get sunny in the PM, but I don't know how much of that to expect. It doesn't look like there's any sun in the future ever again. I'm gonna try and do at least well, I'm going to do at least the Allied command and rally phase, and then I guess try to go shopping or whatever. Just feeling like I'm getting too old to care to do it at all. Big problem with chasing down these routers and bringing them back is even when they do come back, they're not in command, they can't move. So I gotta go back and talk to them again. So once you start having guys falling back pretty far, it's problematic. Now you don't want them routing off the map. And I think what happens is they essentially count as destroyed. I suspect, I haven't looked it up yet, but I suspect they actually do leave the map involuntarily. They're routed, so they're gonna count against your points, and you don't have an opportunity to get them back. I think that's the clever way that this is all gonna work out. But that I will look up. And I don't think it's going to impact, you know, the choices of my unit commanders, but I do feel like I've got to keep my numbers up, even though I've got large numbers. But it's causing me problems because the few commanders who can deal with these particular units, they're probably, found a couple more. They're probably busy commanding the troops at the front, right? The actual brigade leaders. Sending their divisional commander that far back feels painful, but on the other hand, the army commander is really a painful choice, or the Prince of Orange. Actually, this is actually the brigade commander. But I don't know. He's abandoned his brigade, I guess. I think he's this brigade up here. They don't really have much to do except get routed. So it's not a terrible choice. They get to fire and everything. They just don't get to move. But I don't really want to deploy them anywhere else. So it's not that terrible. But yeah, I mean, I'm looking at like, should I use Wellington to go try to do something? Well, I really need these troops. My tendency to procrastinate has gotten the better of me. I think. I really want to do the French movement. I know I'm just being avoidant. All right, let's see if I can convince myself to actually leave the house instead. See, talking on camera, talking to other people, telling them these little things, it is somewhat helpful. It really is. It's Wednesday. That's like 2:30 my time. I guess that's 3:30 real time, or whatever. And I did manage to get out and get my shopping done yesterday. It was a dreary day on the way there, but on the way back it started to get prettier. And then today it's a pretty day. I thought about going out for a walk, but instead I went out and did a little bit of yard work. Not much. I can't do much of anything anymore. I don't know. Just, you know, I get out of breath and everything all at once. Anyway, I'm gonna try to do the French movement, facing formation and movement, whatnot. Not a lot of time left there. Concentrating here, where the French are, you know, under attack, right? And the disruption that that's causing, especially in such close quarters, is causing huge command issues. I don't know. It may be realistic. It may really be realistic that, you know, a unit would have to be within 1 hex of some subordinate commander who's taken over to be able to manipulate the units, and he needs help from his superior officers to take command individually of stacks of a stack of units somewhere else. You can see I have a lot of extra commanders, but I'm really having trouble finding, you know, where the unit's supposed to go. It's kind of because I'm being collapsed inward, as opposed to the Allies who are getting flung back kind of straight back. So it's usually pretty easy, and also their line is much thinner. There's a lot of different commands here. There's like, let's see, I think 4 Cav brigades and at least 2 infantry brigades mixed in there. And it's just a mess and a half. Meanwhile, I've got Riley in place so he can order these during the next command phase, assuming the Allies don't manage to do something to activate those units ahead of that, which they may do now. There's no real harm to it. But yeah, I think it's going to work out, though, that the artillery fire happens right after they're under command, just by the sequence of play. But yeah, I mean, I've gotten this little segment done in about 10 minutes, you know, just trying to puzzle everything out. The rest of the line should be easier, but man, I want to take a break now. Actually, I had to go back here. I realized I had probably screwed up and went back and checked. Yeah, my 2 artillery there are ammo depleted, so they can't stay in the line. I'm pulling them out so they don't lose points. And, you know, I've got an abandoned gun there that could use a gun crew. And I've got guns I could strip ammo off of or something like that if I need them here. But yeah, my firepower, my apparent firepower is decreasing. So the 4 units this guy didn't go. He'll be disordered for what it's worth, which is pretty much nothing. I'm trying my damnedest to figure out what's going on. Nay's moving up in case he's needed, but I don't know what the hell he thinks he's doing. All right. So there were 4 units that I recently engaged. That's a division of 1st Corps, division of 6th Corps here. 6th Corps is going up towards the center. It looks like I've got some weakness over there, although I really should be sending something over here. I don't want my, like, I kind of want to keep corps boundaries in place, but there's no real requirement to, and not a hell of a lot of advantage for the French. They're pretty much able to dispatch decisions where they, or divisions where they want to. There might be some value in pushing this way, but I want to hold the Allies here and try to break them up here. That'll put my units in closer position for the Prussians as well. So I'm gonna stick with this movement going forward here. I can use road movement, not road movement, but strategic movement or whatever, grand tactical, so that I get double movement allowance. Okay, this guy left 1st Corps. There's a lot of 1st Corps. 1st and 6th are basically intermingled here. 2nd is over here, cutting through this. And yeah, I mean, I've got some 1st Corps over on the flank here. So these guys, another division of 1st Corps coming up that way. That's going to put me in a position where I can be flexible with some pretty decent units against either the Prussians to slow them down or whatever, or to continue the outflank that's happening on the extreme right of the Allied line. I'm on the Allied shock phase. I want to load this up, so I don't want to take a break. I'm going to look to see if there's any Allied shocks that I want to make. It's highly unlikely. Right away I see one. So here I've got some landwehr in column facing disordered units. The disordered units have a firepower value of 3. Well, sorry, an effectiveness, an original effectiveness of 3, which gives them a firepower of 2. They're disordered, so none of that really matters. It'll be a 50-50 chance I get hit. If I get hit, I'm probably disordered and bad stuff happens. But I'm a 6 at 2. I'm not going downhill. And he is a 3 at 1 disordered. I think this is a worthwhile shot. So let's do a shock. I haven't done many of these. Because I think breaking up the French line here is a good idea. So the first thing that happens is only these French get to fire because these guys are in line and facing that way, getting a flank shot. I don't know, I think that's disordered, so it's not really a flank. I could have arranged a flank shot on this safely as well. 4, 5, or 6 causes a hit. All right, so I'm in. So now I was a 6 at 2 versus a 3 at 1. So I'm at 200% at +1, but make it +3 because he's disordered, which is a pretty good table. But it's not great for me. I get a D1, which means I'm going to take a hit, but I do rout his unit, causing 2 hits to him. It's in a non-optimal situation. Hey, I'm disordered, so I have all around facing. I can shoot him in the ass. It's not an optimal situation, but there's no real great situation along that area. I'm heavily outnumbered with a lot of reinforcements starting to come in. Yeah, they're disordered and they're you know, going to have to work their way up, but they will undisorder before the fire phase, which is a big deal. Again, the asymmetrical sequence of play gives some really weird situations where, like, the French, as long as they don't press their attack too much, have some real advantages in terms of firepower coming in. I think. I don't know. I mean, we both get to rally before the fire phase, so it's like, it's hard to tell. It just feels like there's an advantage there, but I'm not sure if it really is as big as I'm thinking. All right, I'll keep looking. I forgot to do, he had to make a morale check because his buddy next to him, I think he was next to him, I'm not sure. Maybe not, I don't know. Routed, but he passed his check. I just want to clarify, there's things that are easy to not pay attention to. It's hard to remember where something is after you melee. Let's keep focusing in since I want to talk about these. So, for whatever reason, this guy's got like 5 strength, which means he has a 3 morale. He could come in. Decent attack in some ways, but I've got a line shooting at me. That becomes a lot worse. I'm very likely to take a hit, fairly likely to take a disruption. The odds become much, much worse, and then I'm also, giving up position. So again, on the defensive, I'm fine with shock not being a terribly great option, right? Until the enemy line is in a position like it is here where things are a little disorganized and everything, and the shock isn't going to hurt me too much here. I've got a pretty decent line. Yeah, I would rather not be in column at the end of that line, but at least I'll get a shot. I might end up might get a shot, depending on which order things are in, and might end up dissolving his attack significantly in that sector. So, if I just hit it, I might rout that unit. I might end up so I don't get shot again because I'm out here, but is it really to my advantage? I don't know. It's like shock combat. And again, on the defensive, I'm perfectly willing to accept that, like, shock combat is not generally a great idea. So I'm more reticent towards launching. So I'm looking quickly over here, and I just don't see anything that I want to shock with, except maybe that unit. I'm going to take a look over here. I got an artillery piece. I don't think I'm allowed to shock. It doesn't have a crew. I'm not sure. Seems like I should be able to. But, on the other hand, I get to move next. So, I don't know. I think I'll just leave that alone. And I don't see anything else that wants to go. Which means this is the end of the turn. Yay! And we do get to load this up. I'll swap batteries. But how does it look? My body gets so tired so quickly now. It's so out of shape. I mean, look, that Allied army is not going to hold up if the Prussians don't save their ass. That is pretty clear. They're way behind in points. The French attacks are doing pretty well. The Guard isn't in play yet. I got 2 more divisions coming in. Yes, there's more units over in the backfields for the Allies, especially a lot of cav. There's not a hell of a lot of infantry. There's this, which is not a bad command. That's Brunswick, I think. There's this, which is Landwehr. Barely worth talking about. We've seen how quickly that stuff folds. I got these Dutch coming up. They're okay. They're sort of mixed. A couple good units and some militia quality stuff that is going to try to plug the gap. But I just look at the 2 armies and I'm like, there's no way the Allied army is going to hold out. But that's fine. They don't have to. They just have to hold out long enough for the Prussians to save their bacon. But I do think that coming down off the hills was, over here, was a big mistake. I feel like that weakened my position greatly. The other guy or group that's playing and posting pictures of the game at the same time, they're following a more traditional historical defense. And the Allies don't look like they're doing all that well up on the ridges either. There's a lot of French, and the fact that the French units can attack in line without extending lines. Now, with the option, yeah, you can do that with a bunch of Allied units, but a lot of them can't. A lot of them are 6 strength point units, which just can't hold up. No matter what, they're going to have to extend their line. It's a real problem. The extended lines are a serious weakness. And I just don't feel like, I don't know. If you changed the scale a little bit, you wouldn't have that. And it feels like a real weakness on the Allies, to tell you the truth. It may be that like they twiddled around and said, oh, it's not that bad. It's like a play balance issue to try to give the French a chance. Yeah, but it's an artificial one. Because again, if the hexes were like 50% larger, the units wouldn't have to extend, right? And you could just have like 2 units in one hex where there's smaller units or something, and have total firepower coming out of the hex the way some other games do. I think TSS works that way, where like you can fire a whole stack of units up to like 8 strength points. I know that CWB does, and it feels really, really weird that like, yeah, if you got 2 units in a hex, one is positioned behind the other. Yeah, I don't know about that. I just don't buy it. Especially since it's saying something different depending on the scale that you took the game to. But that's the way this one works. It's somewhat problematic. What about all that Allied Cav? Can I do anything impressive with it? Oh, there's this unit too. This is a pretty good unit. Wow. Well, it's a big unit. It's not all that good because the morale is less than normal. I think these might be, I don't know, I can't tell the difference between Hanover and English. They look a little paler. They might be Hanover. But if I took one and put it right there, that looks the same. But is that Hanover? I don't know. It's a horrible, horrible thing. The color choice for the Hanover versus English, given that there are rules differences potentially there. I don't know. See, first of all, I don't know if there actually are, because there might be, which is that English commanders can't command Hanoverian troops and vice versa. Because remember, any commander can command troops in his line of command or of the same nationality by being stacked with them. And that's for rally, and that's for movement. Well, I can't tell, so what the hell? And then the skirmishers, the Hanoverian skirmishers don't have the British KGL advantage, I think. I'm not positive about that. They may. But it's like, yeah, they're all supposed to. If I'm gonna if you're gonna differentiate via the rules between two sets of counters in the game, make them different color. And there's no question that TSR and even SPI in '76 had the capability to put more colors in the game than they did. We can take a quick look at Ney versus Wellington to see that there's a little bit. Yeah, sure. That's another year or two later. So I don't know. Trying to think, because there are already a lot of colors in this game. Certainly by the time the TSR printing was out, they could have distinguished the Hanoverians better. Not just same color, a little paler. Like here, this is obvious. This I'm not so sure about. But these are, no, these are landwear. And these, I can't tell a difference. I can't tell any difference there. I don't know. Anyway, that's life. All right, I'll put it up. I'm just delaying for whatever reason.